In this video, we'll demonstrate the VLOOKUP and lookup functions in Excel. Let's begin with exercise 1. What we have here is a table with our grading criteria. You'll notice that the table is sorted from low to high in the first column based on the score needed for a particular grade. Over here we have students and the score or grade for a particular course or assignment. And we're going to look up the grade in the grade column based on the score received by the student. So we'll use the VLOOKUP, vertical lookup. There's also an HLOOKUP, horizontal lookup. And in the event that your data was laid out horizontally, you could use the horizontal lookup. In this case, though, it's laid out vertically. So we'll do VLOOKUP. You'll see the syntax of the VLOOKUP. It wants a value to look up. Then it wants you to identify the table or the array where the data that you're looking up is contained. Then it wants you to indicate which column of that data, that array, you want VLOOKUP to go to retrieve the value you're looking up. And then we'll talk a little bit about exact match or approximate match, which is the optional setting, in a moment. We want to look up the score of each student. In this case, the value in this cell to our left, B10, we'll leave that relative. We want to look that up in this table. Now, in this instance, we're not going to select any of the titles. We're going to start with the first value, upper left-hand corner, and take the entire array, so all the way to the last value in the lower right-hand corner. Since we're going to copy this function down, we want to make this absolute, so it always looks to this table, no matter where we copy it, because that's where these values are contained. Now, when we find the score in the first column, and VLOOKUP always looks for values in the first column of the array you identify. So the scores, in this case, have to be in the first column. Once it finds the value in the first column, then I want to tell it which column in our table contains the value or the grade that I want it to return. Now, we could have 20 columns. In this case, we only have 2, so it's pretty obvious. So it's column 2 that has the grade. So once it finds the score in column 1, it's going to bring back the grade from column 2. And I'm going to set this to true, which is the default, an approximate match. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So I press enter, and it goes out and gets an A- for 91, which is correct. Now, the reason we set this for an approximate match is you'll notice that there is no 91 in the score column. 91 isn't there. If we set it for an exact match, it wouldn't find 91 in that column. We get an error message. But in approximate match, what the function does is it starts with the first value, and they're sorted from low to high. And it says, is this greater than or equal to the value I'm looking up? In this case, 91. It says no, so it goes to the next one. Is this greater than or equal to the value I'm looking up? No, so it goes to the next one. It continues doing that. If it finds a value that's equal to it, grabs that value. But as it goes down, if it finds a value that's greater than the value it's looking for, the cursor concludes, hey, I've passed it. So it goes back one and takes that value. So that's an approximate match. That's how we look up values in a range. Now that we've done that, we set everything up correctly, so I can just copy this down. Take a look to see if my grades are correct. Is 89% a B+? Yes, 89% would be a B+. I can get my average grade here by taking the average, of course, of this column of grades And then I can just copy this with a Control C and paste it with a Control V. And since I used the appropriate relative and absolute cell references, it will tell me that the average for that assignment or course, the average grade was a B. Let's go to exercise 2. Now we're going to use the lookup function, just straight lookup. Now the difference is the lookup function does not have the option to indicate whether you want an exact match or an approximate match. The lookup function always does an approximate match. So whenever you use the lookup function, you have to make sure that your lookup array is sorted from low to high. Otherwise, the lookup function will return erroneous data. Sometimes it will appear to work, sometimes it doesn't. The great thing about the lookup function, though, is unlike VLOOKUP, the vector that contains the values that you're looking for and the vector that contains the matching values don't have to be oriented the same way. They can be shifted. They can be one horizontal and one vertical. So let's demonstrate that here in this instance. Now you may want to lay your worksheet out like this. We have, I'm going to find value 2. I'm going to find it right here. So here's I'm going to look up value 2 here, and then I want to get the word equivalent for 2. I'm going to type lookup. I'm going to look up the value to my left. I'm going to look for that in this vector. Careful to select only that row. Then, once I find it in that vector, I will go and get the matching value that I want in that vector. So what lookup does in this case is it looks for 2 in this series of data. There are 5 elements. It finds the second one. Then it goes to this vector, which contains 5 elements. That's important. And it gets the second one. It just matches the position. I found it was the second value in this first vector, so I'm going to go get the second value in the second vector. So they don't have to be laid out the same. In this case, we'll have them offset. We'll notice we have a vector here. They don't correspond. This vector is shifted up slightly. Could be on another page. Could be wherever. They don't have to be contiguous, unlike VLOOKUP. So I'm going to use lookup. I'm going to look up the value to my left. I'm going to look for it in this vector. Once I find it, I'm going to return the value in this vector. And there we go. I can change that to a 3. You get a 3. Just remember that when you use lookup, you have to ensure that the values in the lookup vector are in order from low to high. This is something that we do a lot. We create a probability distribution table in BA 302 and in MBA 605. So I want to work through this. We have to create a probability distribution based on sales history. In this case, the number sold. In order to do this, I take the number sold over, maybe I've observed for a year or 2 or 3 years, and I've taken the average number of sold, and I've calculated the probability of selling 250 in a month, the probability of selling 300 in a month, and I've sorted this number sold low to high. Now I want to create a lower bound, and I create the lower bound that starts with 0 all the time. And the upper bound in all of these cases is always the lower bound plus the probability. So we increase the lower bound by the probability of this occurrence, and that becomes the new lower bound for the next level of occurrence. Then the upper bound is always equal to the lower bound plus the probability of occurrence. Then the new lower bound is equal to the previous upper bound, and we just continue that all the way down. And this formula will always be the same, looking the cell to its left and adding it the cell 2 columns to its left. So I'm just going to copy this down. And then as I complete these, bring the old upper bound into the new lower bound. Each time I can copy that down, it's the same relationship. I can tell I'm correct because I start with 0, end with 1. So I have taken in all 100% of the options. Now I can use our random number generator to look up in this table the probability of a particular volume of sales for a month. So I have month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 all year. For this exercise, we'll use the lookup function. And the value I want to look up, I want to look up a random occurrence. A random function will return a value between 0 and approaching 1. And we will look that then up in our probability distribution in the lower bound. So here's the, we have the lookup value. Here's the lookup vector. Okay, I'm going to set that to absolute because we're going to keep it there. Once I find a value there, then I want to go get the number sold, make that absolute. This then puts this real world probability distribution. This is one that we've put together through observation. It allows us now to model this probability distribution in our forecasting, whatever. Now I can expand this down for 12 months and then calculate my annual. It's just the sum, my annual sales with this modeled monthly sales. And finally, we'll go to exercise 4. Here we'll demonstrate how you look up values in a table when the lookup array is not sorted in ascending order from low to high. So we'll look up one of these social security numbers. Let's just pick one, just put it in here. And I want to look up the person's last name, so I'll use VLOOKUP. Look up the value to my left, comma, look it up in this array of values, this table, make that absolute. I want last name, so I'm going to return the value in the second column. Then I'm going to set this to false to get an exact match. So it's going to look through, not looking down through ranges, treating the first column as a series of ranges with a beginning value and an ending value, but it's just going to look at the values themselves, looking for an exact match, and it finds that. So for the first name, I'll do the same thing, VLOOKUP. Look up the social security number, look for it in this array. I'll select the entire table, F4 to make it absolute. Comma, this time I'll get the value in column 3, which is the first name. Again, setting it to false to force an exact match, and it gets the correct value. As you can see, if I search now for this social security number, I then get that value, which is correct. And you'll notice that they can be out of order. Doesn't matter, it'll go and get the correct values. That's how you use the lookup functions in Excel.